Most people think wealth is about money. It isn't. Wealth is about perception. It's the ability to see value where everyone else sees nothing. And once you understand that, everything changes. You stop chasing opportunities. You start designing them. There's a street in Chicago that most people walk past without really seeing it. During the day, it's busy enough, crowded, normal, but at night, it dies. One winter evening, a man stood outside a restaurant on that street, just standing there, watching snow collect slowly against the dark windows. Inside, the picture was becoming familiar. 3 customers, maybe 4, scattered across tables built for 20. One waitress moved between them like she was walking through water. Tired, exhausted in that specific way that comes from slow nights stretching into weeks. Half the lights were off. Someone was trying to save on electricity. Near the register, the owner sat alone with a stack of papers in front of him. Invoices, unpaid ones, the man outside. He didn't look like he had answers. No expensive suits, no confident energy that usually announces itself. Just quiet attention. He walked inside. The door opened into warmth, and there was that smell. Good food, genuine cooking. He noticed it as he moved toward the counter. The plates on nearby tables. They were well made, generous portions, thoughtful presentation. None of this was the problem. He ordered coffee, black. The waitress brought it quickly. And then he just looked, really looked, in space, at how it felt, in the absence of something he couldn't quite name yet. Then he turned to the owner. How much does this place lose every month? The owner looked up from his papers. His expression shifted. From confusion to something like recognition. He laughed, but not because anything was funny. Enough to keep me awake at night, he said. The man nodded slowly. He understood something that most business owners never stop to consider. Every business exists in a marketplace crowded with thousands of options. Your brain cannot possibly pay attention to all of them. It's not built that way. So over time, your mind developed a filtering system, a mechanism to decide what deserves your attention and what doesn't. Your brain pays attention to what's novel, what's unexpected, what breaks the pattern of normal. Everything else, it becomes invisible. Not ignored? Not exactly. Just not processed as worth noticing. This restaurant had become invisible. Not because it was bad, because it was ordinary. The kind of place your mind registers as fine, then immediately erases from memory. He leaned forward slightly. What if the problem isn't the food? The owner frowned. His mind searched for alternatives. Pricing? Location? Staffing? Service? The man looked out at the empty street. Attention, he said. That single word. It landed differently than anything the owner had heard before. The real problem wasn't quality, wasn't service, wasn't pricing. It was invisible. 3 days later, the man returned. He had a proposal. Give me 14 days. The owner studied him carefully. Are you a marketing guy? No. I study how people think. He said it simply, not arrogantly, just as a fact. The owner decided to listen. The following weekend, something unusual appeared on that street. A black piano, sitting outside the restaurant, under a small heated tent, old, but carefully maintained. You could see the quality in it. A simple sign beside it. Play one song. Get dinner free. No purchase necessary. At first, people laughed. A piano on a Chicago sidewalk in winter. It seemed absurd. But something was already happening before anyone even touched the keys. When your brain encounters something that violates expectations, I cannot ignore it. A piano outside a restaurant creates a contradiction your mind has to resolve. Why is this here? What does it mean? That forced question is the beginning of genuine engagement. Your attention shifts. It's no longer passive. It becomes active. Someone stopped. They looked at the piano, then at the sign. They approached, slowly, sat down on the bench. Their fingers found the keys. Real music came out. Not perfect, but genuine. A crowd formed almost instantly. And this wasn't random. This was psychology in action. When you see other people paying attention to something, your brain interprets that as a signal. If multiple people find this worth watching, It probably is. You trust the judgment of crowds, especially when you're uncertain. A piano on a sidewalk is uncertain. You don't know if it's worth your time. But when you see others gathering, your brain updates its assessment. These people think it's interesting. So it probably is. Phones came out. Videos started. Someone played a different song. People watched. Some sang quietly. Then another person played. And another. By evening, the entire sidewalk was full. Here's what happens when music plays. Something shifts in human neurology. It bypasses rational thinking almost entirely. It goes straight to the limbic system, the part of your brain that processes emotion and memory, and experiences that create genuine emotion. They're remembered far longer than experiences that don't. Nobody was inside the restaurant yet. Nobody was thinking about the food. They were thinking about what was happening right in front of them. That was the first principle underneath all of this. People don't buy products first. They buy curiosity. They buy the feeling of being part of something. They buy the experience of discovering something unexpected. The following night, the line stretched even longer. Musicians came from across the city. They'd heard about the piano. They wanted to play it. The energy had completely shifted. People weren't passing by anymore. They were arriving with intention. That's when the strategy deepened. A new sign appeared beside the piano. Anyone who uploaded a video of themselves playing and tagged the restaurant would be entered into a monthly drawing. The prize was a private rooftop dinner with other musicians and creators. Something intimate, something exclusive, something that couldn't just be bought off a menu. This activated a completely different psychological mechanism. When people make purchases, when they choose where to go or what to participate in, they're rarely just satisfying a practical need. They're making a statement about who they are, or who they want to become. Someone who uploads a video of themselves playing piano outside a restaurant on a winter night. They're not just sharing entertainment. They're saying something. I'm the kind of person who does this, who notices, who participates. The rooftop dinner made that statement even louder. Not just, I went somewhere interesting, but I'm part of something most people don't even know exists. Something shifted in how the business operated. Customers became marketers without realizing it. Not because they were asked to promote a restaurant, but because the experience was emotionally memorable enough to share naturally. A stranger recorded someone playing. I shared it with friends. Those friends came to see it themselves. A local musician uploaded their performance. Other musicians saw it. A photographer documented the crowds. Their images spread. An influencer saw those images and came to the street. Their followers saw the post. And so it continued, quietly, without force. Within 1 week, the restaurant's social media following had grown dramatically. Reservation requests flooded in. Bookings tripled. The owner stared at the screen. Dates booked weeks out. People he'd never met, wanting to come to his restaurant. He turned to the man. We didn't change the food. The plates are exactly the same. The recipe is exactly the same. The chef is exactly the same. So why are people suddenly desperate to come here? The man nodded slowly. Exactly. That's the point. He paused, letting that settle. The market is crowded with good food. Thousands of restaurants serve excellent meals. Thousands of chefs can prepare beautiful dishes. What's actually scarce isn't quality, it's attention. Real attention. The kind where someone forgets their phone, their problems, their ordinary day, and becomes completely present. Whoever can create that controls the market. 2 months later, the restaurant was profitable. Not because the food improved, not because the prices changed, not because the location became better, because the business had become emotionally memorable. And when something is emotionally memorable, people don't forget it. They return, they bring others, they make it part of their story. But here's what most people miss. Attention alone doesn't build lasting wealth. Attention gets people in the door. Positioning is what makes them stay. Around the same time, in Miami, a different man opened a small luxury watch boutique. The location was terrible. Tiny storefront, minimal foot traffic, and directly across the street, one of the largest jewelry chains in the entire city, bright lights spilling onto the sidewalk, advertisements covering every surface. The store is always crowded. Everyone who knew the industry told him the same thing. You cannot compete with that. You don't have the budget. You don't have the inventory. You don't have the recognition. You will fail. He listened to all of it carefully. And then, he agreed. He decided not to compete. Instead, he placed a small, elegant sign outside his door. Free watch cleaning, no purchase necessary. It seemed strange, giving away labor, offering service with no guaranteed return. How does that lead to revenue? But something began to happen. People walked in carrying expensive watches, Rolex, Cartier, Patek Philippe, watches worth thousands of dollars. They came because the service was free and their watches needed attention. He cleaned each one carefully, polished the metal, adjusted the straps. He handled every watch like it mattered. Because to him, it did. Each watch represented something about the person wearing it, their taste, their values, the story they told about themselves, through what they chose to wear. While customers waited, something important was happening psychologically. They were in a heightened state of receptiveness. They'd committed to being there. They weren't browsing mindlessly. They were present. And in that state of presence, they began to notice things. The curated displays, the warm, intentional lighting, the calm that filled the room. And then, they felt the contrast. The massive chain across the street was bright, loud, crowded. Salespeople move quickly. Pressure embedded in every interaction. When you walk into an environment like that, your emotional response is almost automatic. I'm being sold to. I need to be careful. That response closes people down, makes them skeptical, critical, defensive. Walking into the small boutique produced something entirely different. Quiet, unhurried, no pressure visible anywhere. The emotional response was closer to something else. I'm being respected. My taste is being honored. That response opens people, and neuroscience has established this clearly. Decisions are made emotionally first, then rationalized logically afterward. The rational mind builds the argument, but the emotional mind makes the choice. The same watch, in two different environments, produces two completely different emotional experiences. And those experiences determine whether someone buys or walks away. The large chain was selling inventory, rows and rows of watches. The small boutique was selling identity. The feeling that choosing this place said something true about who you were. Months later, the large chain panicked. They dropped prices, ran promotions, offering discounts. Everything must go. But customers didn't return. Because the boutique had never been competing on price. It was competing on perception. And perception operates by completely different rules. Price wars are won by whoever can absorb the most loss. Perception battles are won by whoever understands what the customer actually wants to feel. One afternoon, a friend asked him directly, "Why offer free cleaning if it barely covers costs?" The man looked toward a customer standing near a display case. They were holding a limited edition timepiece, turning it slowly in their hands, feeling the weight of it, examining the craftsmanship, imagining what it would mean to own something like this. Cleaning watches isn't the business. The friend waited. That is, everything before that moment is just an invitation. Most people try to monetize attention immediately. Someone shows interest, and the instinct is to push for the sale. But the people who build real, lasting wealth understand something more patient. Sometimes, the front door of a business isn't the business itself. Sometimes it's just a bridge. And once you understand that distinction, you start seeing opportunities completely differently. You stop asking what you can sell. You start asking how to build an environment where people naturally want to buy. Not how to convince someone, but how to let them convince themselves. That same way of thinking solved a completely different problem in Arizona. A luxury hotel was failing. It had everything a hotel should have. Beautiful rooms, award-winning architecture, an excellent location, professional staff, clean facilities, all the things you'd expect from a luxury hotel. And still, it was failing. Bookings were low. Occupancy was poor. The owner carried significant debt. Conference halls sat empty and silent. He'd tried many explanations. Competition, the economy, advertising not reaching the right people. He cycled through possibilities without landing on the real one. Because the real problem wasn't visible from where he was standing, a consultant arrived. She walked the property for nearly an hour without taking notes or asking questions. She simply observed the lobby, the reception area, the conference rooms, the hallways, the guest rooms. She was looking for something specific, not what was wrong, what was being overlooked. Eventually, she found her way to the rooftop. She opened the door and stepped outside. The view was extraordinary. The city spread in every direction, buildings, lights, open horizon. The sky above it all. She stood there quietly for a moment, then smiled slightly. The owner had followed her up. "What's funny?" She turned to face him. "You built a beautiful hotel, in the right location, with excellent rooms and excellent service, and you ignored the view." He looked at the skyline. He'd stopped really seeing it years ago. It was there every day. It had become part of the background. Invisible. But she was right. It was extraordinary. Here's what most people don't understand about perception. There's a psychological phenomenon called habituation. When you encounter something repeatedly, your brain gradually stops processing it as new information. It filters out what doesn't change, so you can focus on what does. If you noticed every detail of your environment every single day, you'd be overwhelmed. So your brain learns to tune out repetition. The owner had become accustomed to the view. It had become invisible to him. But to every first-time visitor, it was anything but invisible. This is why an outside perspective carries such specific value. Not because outsiders are smarter, but because they haven't been inside long enough to stop seeing what's actually there. 3 weeks later, the rooftop was transformed. Open-air cinema nights. A screen set up under the stars. The city is glowing around it. Live jazz on weekends. Music drifting across the night sky. Private dinners for small groups. Sunrise wellness sessions. As the sun came up over the skyline, the hotel stopped marketing its rooms. It started marketing what it felt like to be on that rooftop. The memory of watching a film under the stars. The feeling of sitting above the ordinary noise of the city. The experience of beginning a day from that height. Local residents began visiting, not as overnight guests, but for the experiences themselves. They brought friends, posted about it, photographers documented the space, influencers tagged the location, videos spread. The rooftop became the destination. And once it became the destination, hotel bookings followed, not because the rooms improved, because the entire meaning of the hotel changed. The rooftop had always been there. The view had always existed. It was already an asset. It just hadn't been recognized as one. And that is one of the most important things in this entire story. The most valuable asset in a business is often the one nobody is paying attention to. 3 different cities, 3 different industries, 3 completely different problems. But one pattern. Underneath all of them, the first person understood attention. How to direct human consciousness towards something it had been filtering out. How to create curiosity where there was none. The second person understood positioning. How to attach identity to a product. How to make a purchase feel like a statement about who you are. The third person understood hidden assets. How to see value that already exists, but isn't being used. How to leverage what's already there. Before building anything new. Different principles, same psychological foundation, and none of them asked the conventional question. The question that most struggling businesses circle around endlessly. How do I sell more? They asked something different. How do I create gravity? Because the highest level of business isn't persuasion. Persuasion is still pushing, trying to move someone in a direction they're not naturally moving. The highest level is attraction, building something people move toward on their own. Without fully knowing why, without feeling sold. That's why certain businesses feel magnetic, even when they're hard to explain. Why some communities form around experiences rather than products. Why do some people seem to build influence almost effortlessly, while others work harder and achieve less? One is selling, the other is engineering the conditions under which people naturally choose. Most people spend their lives working harder inside systems they never stop to question. They accept the rules of the game. They try to win within the existing framework. They wait for the right opportunity to appear, and then try to move quickly enough to capitalize on it. But the people who build real, lasting wealth, they do something quieter. They learn how attention actually works. Not just how to grab it, but the deeper mechanisms that determine what the human brain processes as worth noticing. They learn how positioning works, how identity becomes attached to products and experiences, how people make emotional decisions, and then build logical stories around them afterward. They learn the patterns underneath human behavior, the predictable architecture of why people choose what they choose. And once they understand those things, something shifts. They stop reacting to opportunities, and they start creating them. Wealth rarely arrives through waiting for the perfect idea. It tends to come from seeing ordinary things differently, from noticing what others have overlooked, from recognizing a principle and applying it before everyone else realizes it applies. That's the real game underneath all of this, not money. Money is the byproduct, not products. Products are the container. It's perception. The ability to see value where others see nothing. The people who master this often end up controlling markets long before anyone else understands what's happening. Because while everyone else is competing harder, cutting prices, working longer hours, these people are doing something entirely different. They're redesigning the board itself, not winning within the existing game, changing what game is being played. Once you understand this, it's difficult to unsee it. You start noticing it in businesses that succeed in ways no one predicted, in communities built around experiences rather than transactions, in people who seem to carry disproportionate influence without obvious effort. The principle is always the same underneath. They understood something about human perception that others didn't, and they built systems around that understanding. Now you know what that something is. The question is what you do with it. Because understanding a principle and actually living by it are two very different things. Most people will find this interesting and change nothing. They'll return to the existing game, continue working within systems they never questioned, continue waiting for opportunities rather than designing them. But some people will start looking differently at what's already around them. They'll start asking different questions. They'll start noticing the invisible patterns that were always there. Those are the people who quietly rebuild their circumstances, not through luck or sudden inspiration, but through a shift in how they see. What part of this felt most familiar to you? When you look at your own situation, where do you see this principle already at work? Even if you didn't have the language for it before, leave it in the comments. The people who actually engage with ideas like these are usually the ones who are ready to do something with them. If the psychology behind wealth and decision-making is something you want to understand more deeply, there's more coming on this channel. Not shortcuts, not motivation, just a serious look at how people actually think, decide, and build. If that's what you're here for, subscribe. The next video starts exactly where most people get stuck, the gap between knowing something and actually doing it. That gap is where everything either breaks or begins.